My butt is hot. Okay, my butt kickers are hot. They're actually overheating. I've got a problem with my new setup, and it's not a big problem. So far, I've only experienced this in one condition. Mad Max Fury Road, fantastic movie by the way if you haven't seen it, especially if you have a really good home theater system, especially if you have transducers, is an absolute demo-worthy showstopper. I can't think of any other movie for transducers that works them out like this does. It is just constant transducer level bass. It's low, it's loud, and it is virtually nonstop. And the butt kickers are shutting down after about a half an hour. Now, I don't have them, as I went over in my setup video, dialed up a lot. There are a lot of people out there that literally like so much transducer level that their couch is moving up and down and glasses of water are throwing out and you have a seizure sitting in your seat. That's not what I've got. These are very naturally tuned. So it's literally like you just have big subwoofers and you're feeling the impact through a natural vibration in your seat. That's it. So they're not cranked way up. I'm using the Mini LFE versions, and they have a power rating suggestion of between 50 and 250 watts per unit. I have 2 per seat, again, just to add that extra little oomph without having to overdrive just 1 in a seat or 1 in a couch. So I've got 4 in my 2-seat love seat home theater seat. And it works great. Absolutely love the outcome. But after a half an hour, they're getting heat soaked. It is the thermal tripping. I'm driving them from this amp here, which is the Dayton Audio 230. This is a 230 total watt unit it's a single output unit, first of all. But if you have 4 butt kickers, they are 4 ohms each, and you wire them in series parallel, which shows a 4 ohm load to the amplifier. It just divides it up between the units. So I'm pushing, about 55 watts or so per unit. That is, if you paid attention, right at the minimum that they suggest going to the butt kickers. Theory 1 is I'm clipping the signal. It's not delivering enough power, even though I don't, what I feel, have them turned up very loud or very strong. It may just be too much, and I may be asking the amp to deliver what it doesn't have. Delivering a clipped signal in a speaker is very bad. You can burn out the voice coil, you can damage the physical parts, and most importantly, you can hear it. It distorts the sound coming from a speaker, especially a subwoofer, and it makes nasty sounds when you overdrive a sub from lack of power, turning up the volume more than the power you have to deliver. Well, in these, I can't tell what happens if you do that. They don't make any noise. They just vibrate, they shake. They're physical weights that move. Now I have on very slim occasion felt them kind of like, I'll call it bottoming out. That's what I see people say. And it feels like, something actually, instead of moving and vibrating, it feels like something hitting a hard stop. I don't know if that's a clipped signal. I don't know if that's too much asking of the units. I have no idea, but I do occasionally feel that. So that's theory number 1. I'm just not delivering enough power. The fix for that is deliver more power. And that way, whenever they're trying to play whatever you're asking, it's not delivering a clipped signal. A clipped signal, if you're looking at a waveform, a normal frequency waveform, say it's a sine wave, say a 20 hertz bass note, whatever, and it's just sitting there, humming along. Well, as you turn up the volume, it wants to get bigger. The amplitude gets bigger. Well, at the limits of the amp, it can't go any higher and it can't go any lower. So what happens is it hits the top limit, and then say this is the top limit. If you're underneath it, nice curve, right? Like a dolphin swimming. If you go and try to go above that limit, the waveform still wants to be up here, but it can't go up here. And what happens is it stays here. So it, instead of waving, hits and goes flat and then comes down where it would naturally. And same thing on the bottom. That's called a square wave, or technically not a total square wave, but it's part of a square wave. When you have that hard edge, a square wave proper would be straight up, over, straight down. That would melt your equipment. This is a clipped signal. So you need to raise that limit. You need to give enough power so that no matter what volume you ask, it's got enough power to actually create a normal waveform. The theory is, at least this is why I believe this is probably the case, when you run a clipped signal through a speaker, it heats up. It's very bad because the speaker isn't moving at the points where it's flat. The speaker, instead of moving in and out, that's exactly what the waveform is doing. The speaker cone is following that waveform. Well, the speaker cone, if you hit a flat, stops. And instead of the speaker doing this, it goes. That's horrible. And I can't imagine it's any better for butt kickers or bass shakers or any other kind of transducers. So we're going from this guy here, around 50 watts a channel, to this guy here. This is a 3000 watt amplifier. Let's open this up and I'll tell you about this guy. So what we have here is the Behringer NX3000. This is rated for 3000 watts, and I do not believe that for 1 second. Brands like this are notorious for just completely overstating the specs. Audioholics reviewed and tested, most importantly, its baby brother and found that it was putting out 2/3 of its rated power. So I'm going to be calling this and considering it a 2000 watt amplifier from here on out. That's still twice what my butt kickers can handle, so no problem there whatsoever. This is what's called a pro audio piece of equipment. Behringer and Crown are two very popular brands that you'll see not just out there in its intended use, which is bars and DJs and churches and clubs and all that kind of stuff, because these are made to power PA speakers. They're made to power things that are just trying to be loud and not super clean. But you will see a lot of home users using them as well. And that's because for certain applications, namely subwoofers and transducers, these fit the bill. So a normal amplifier like the Dayton Audio, for example, they are made to deliver a reasonable amount of power and do so cleanly at a decent price. And they're typically class AB amps. Pro audio stuff does none of that. It is made to produce obscene amounts of power cheaply, not necessarily cleanly. In fact, hardly any of them are a particularly clean signal, this included. You don't get a super low noise floor, you don't get low distortion numbers, you don't get low harmonics. I mean, it's just made to produce power. They're almost all class D. This thing is super lightweight, half the weight of the Dayton Audio, for example. It is a metal chassis, it's a plastic front, very basic controls. You simply have gain for 2 channels and a physical power button. These are not made to hook up to your home equipment. You have no trigger, you have no soft power, you have no remotes. Some of them will have more controls than others, but they're not even made to physically connect to your home stuff. Look at the back. Know what these connectors are? Yeah, most people don't unless you're a DJ. These are XLR and speakon connectors, and you can't hook in an RCA, and you can't hook up even bare speaker wire, let alone banana plugs or spades or anything like that. So you are required to do some additions, and most importantly here, modifications. See this little fan here? These things are made to run forever. They're built to be tanks. They're made to run super cool, and they're made to be stacked and thrown around. We're gonna pop the top on this because I've got to get in there anyway, but you'll see that it's probably built way differently than any home unit that you've seen. But what I'm gonna do for the connections here is I have an XLR to RCA adapter. This is really easy, and this will simply plug into my wireless receiver so that I can get my input in. They have all different combinations of male and female, whatever you need. I think this was $8-9, something like that. Super easy. It's a lot better than trying to make your own cable. And then this is a 25-foot speaker connector for this type of connector. And no, I'm not using 25 feet. In fact, I'm probably going to use a foot total. I'm going to cut these ends off. There are simply 2 wires inside, bare wire, and I'm going to splice in my bare wire speaker wires. So that gives me a way to connect in the amplifier. And the reason I got a super long one is because there was a combo deal, and I got the cable here and the amplifier, drum roll please, $279 for 2,000 watts. Yeah. Do you get the point now? Why a lot of home users are using these for subs and transducers? But this fan is a problem because they are loud. Quiet equipment is no priority for any kind of DJ or club or venue or church or anything like that, because this is just designed to run forever, be bulletproof, keep it cool, and it sounds like a freaking hairdryer. It's like, some of them get as loud as a server. And if you're in IT, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But let's fire this up and see exactly how loud it is. If it's anything more than silent, it's bad for me because this is going right behind my seat. If you have your stuff in a rack and it's in a separate media room and you can't hear your stuff anyway, well, that's fine. You don't have to do this. But what I'm doing, I've got a ton of PC stuff left over. I've been building computers for years and years. Whole bunch of fans. I have a Noctua here, which is my silent fan of choice. I used to use them a long time ago when I used these little ones. This is an 80 mil, and I hope this is an 80 mil. I thought it was an 80 mil. Yeah, it's an 80 mil. Point is, these are silent. It still pushes a ton of air. I've used them, I haven't used them in a while, but I used to use them in all my computer builds back when they used 80 mil for case fans. Been using these larger 120s for a long time. But they're silent, so you can put it anywhere, including behind your seat where mine goes, and you won't hear a thing. So this, you can get these for under 15 bucks. There are other brands out there also, but I know for a fact Noctua are awesome, so that's what I went with there. Let's go ahead and open up the top here. Just have a few screws. And there's the inside. Super simple. You can see no big audiophile toroidal transformer. Not made for clean power, just made for a lot of cheap power. Plenty of airspace here to keep everything cool. This is just a little plastic fan shroud to direct the incoming cool air down onto the power transformers there. And it's never been powered up, so I don't have to worry about the capacitors in here. If yours has been powered up, please take that into consideration. Let me stick a power cord in here real quick and we'll just get a little reference level for the volume. So I've got my lapel mic on. We're about 6 inches away. Let's go ahead and power it up. Little relay click. And yeah, that is obnoxiously loud. It's definitely not hairdryer level. Definitely not server loud, but it's an annoying whine and pretty loud. I mean, it's louder than your typical dishwasher, let me put it that way. So definitely no bueno for using behind a seat while you're watching a movie. Let's fix this fan. First thing to do is take off these 4 screws here, holding on the little gate, and that should release the fan from the inside. Shroud should just be kind of taped onto it. Doesn't look like it's really secured with much. And it should just unplug. I'm going to assume this is a 2-wire fan. Fans will have 2, 3, or 4 wires, and it doesn't matter which one you use. If you're replacing a 2-wire, all it's going to do is spin at a fixed RPM depending on the voltage coming out of the amp to power it. I'm going to assume this is a 5 volt. 5 and 12 are the typical ranges that you'll see for fans, but this is running at a really low RPM, just from the tone that I'm getting out of it. I'm definitely going to put this back on just so nothing sticks in there. That doesn't cause any noise. So here is the fan. And it just sits in there, and yeah, this is just literally a little glob of glue or whatever. So that's not important. And we do have a 2-wire fan. There's a simple connector right here. You just pull up on it. Oh, did they glue this? Yeah, okay, they got a glob. Like I said, these are built to be tanks. They have it hot glued down to the board. So I just need a little bit of a knife and cut away carefully a little bit of that glue. Might need a smaller knife because I'm running into this. All right, so now I can see the little tab that the glue blob unlocked. We're gonna pinch it and should be able to slide the connector out, and there we go. So here's our 2-pin fan prong connector, and if the fan you get doesn't fit in there, which this one probably won't, you can just splice this 2-pin connector onto the appropriate positive and negative terminals of the new fan. So what I'm going to do here, just for maximum flexibility, this particular fan comes with what's called a low noise adapter. It's just a resistor. When you're using this with a non-speed controlled device, like this is, normally the motherboard will send pulse width modulation signals and control the speed directly, but for instances like this, where it's going to be running at full speed, depending on what voltage it's getting, you may want to slow it down if it's too loud, and that's what this does. So this will bring it down from 2200 to 1700 RPM if you need it. So what I'm going to do is keep the stock end on the fan, because that way I can just plug this in if I need to. And then what I'll do is use one of the extensions right here, give you this little Y splitter in case you want to run multiple fans. And all I'm going to do is use it right there. And then I can just hack off this end of this connector, since I don't need it at all, and we'll wire it into the positive and negative here. And we'll just tuck this up somewhere inside the amp. This will sit in here. Stock shroud will stick back on, and we'll see if we need this speed adapter or not. We'll try it with it out, and if it's quiet enough at full speed, we're good to go. So now I just need to verify which of the 4, or rather 3 in here, and that answers that question, because with this adapter, you only have the positive and negative, and I can go ahead and splice now. Easy peasy. So on Noctua 4-pin fans, the pinout is black ground, yellow positive. Got our custom connector here. Plug it back into the amp. Bending that little tab out of the way. And now I'm going to try it first without the speed reducer. See if it's quiet enough for our needs. I'll just set this in here for now like this. And power it up real quick. As soon as I find my power cord, here it is. And we'll do a little audio comparison here. See how quiet this got. Same distance away, mic's right here. Absolutely nothing. You can't even tell it's on in my ear. I have to literally get 2 inches away from it. It's purely silent. Okay, that is perfect. Now I'm just gonna stick this back on, zip tie this out of the way in here, screw this back on, and we're ready to connect up to, oh, no, we're not ready. I have to cut up my speakon cable, and I'm just gonna pull out the 2 connectors out of here on each end, and that will, actually I only need 1, because I'm running this in bridged mode. I don't think I mentioned that. This also has the option here in the back, again, very common in pro audio applications, of not only running in stereo or mono, it is a 2-channel output. You can do what's called bridging it, which is using both outputs as one. You only end up connecting one output, and it just pours all the power into it. and that will work absolutely perfectly. It means I don't change any of the wiring for my butt kickers. I could run it in the stereo mode, but I would get a little bit less power. It's more efficient running it in bridge. So you just flick that there, check the manual to see which one you use, but in bridged mono, it's rated at 3000 watts at 4 ohms, as opposed to stereo, 2 times 900 watts at 4 ohms. So not quite double the rated power, but like I said, I'm considering this 2000 watts, still good enough. Now it also has a low pass, high pass, or full range crossover. So again, not totally consumer friendly. You don't get the dial, you don't get any kind of parametric EQ, you don't get any kind of range, it's just set. And that's because these are meant to be used with, for example, just a big subwoofer or just a big PA speaker, something like that. But we're gonna be using full range because I'm using the mini DSP to actually control the crossover. Same as the other one, I'm just gonna disable it. Okay, so I'm gonna cut this up, button it back up, and there's nothing left to do but test after that. Now you can, of course, buy an adapter if you want to simply use a cable and not cut it and splice it, but I have zero use for these. They are literally only for connecting PA speakers, which I will never have. And inside we've just got 2 regular old copper wires. We just need to strip away enough of this. I don't know if this will be, nope, not quite big enough for my auto strippers. So we'll just do it the old fashioned way, get those 2 conductors out of there. And you can put connectors on these wires if you really want to. It doesn't make any difference to the operation at all. And I've got bare wire coming out from my butt kickers, so I'm just going to wrap them and tape them. That'll be more than good enough. And this goes in. Bada bing, bada boom. Verifying on this chart here, channel A is what you use when you're in bridge mode, and it confirms that pin output 1, which is the red, is the positive, and 2 is the negative, standard speaker colors. And then over on the input side, the XLR adapter is going to go in likewise to channel A. Make sure it's all the way in, and now I've got an RCA, and this will go right into my wireless receiver that was going directly in via RCA to the old amp, ready to install. So it's the next day, and we have success. After thorough testing, I made it further into the movie at a slightly higher level than even before. No problems whatsoever. So the bad news is I still can't tell you how to tell if you're being fed a clipped signal or not, because nothing fundamentally changed. The only difference between the 230 amp and now this bigger one, it's a small dynamic range increase. It's subtle, and it's something where if you hadn't seen both differences, you're not gonna even tell it's there. In Mad Max Fury Road, for example, I noticed 2 things that just stood out because it wasn't there before. Right at the title sequence where the Mad Max comes up and Fury Road stamps onto the middle. With the smaller amp, it was more of a constant tone at that point, and you can feel a little bit more subtleties in the low tones kind of rumbling through. That was definitely new. I still feel a few points here and there where it feels like something just hitting metal to metal, that bottoming out feeling, that is still there. So that is not indicative of a clipped signal. But, you know, if it's not supposed to be there, it's handling it just fine with this amp, let me put it that way. Now the second point is when the War Rig just goes off-road and you get about a minute of this low, monotonous background tone. Before, likewise, it was more of a solid tone, just that emanating pulse and almost the wave feeling through the transducers. And now on this amp, you feel subtleties. It's not just boom, it's whoa, 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 whoa. You can definitely tell that there's more there to the signal. Sometimes, now this just may be my mind playing tricks, sometimes it feels like there is a little bit more oomph to the actual tactile ultra low bass. Don't know if that's really there. It may just be that it's now playing the signal cleanly instead of being clipped and nothing to do with more power per se. I'm not using hardly any of the amplifier. On the signal meter on the front, first bar this is at reference volume, mind you. At reference volume, the first bar is lit and the second is barely flickering. So the amp is just sitting here going, it's hardly being used at all. And that's fine because, like I said, I'm not out to make the couch shake apart, but these amps are seriously powerful if you want that. Now, if you do want to use all of its power or even more, you're gonna need the full-size butt kickers, not these minis. Just note. And those actually require a ton of power. That's not something where 50 watts is even viable. I believe they start at a recommended 200 watts and they go up to like 600. So you need a serious amp if you're doing multiples of the full-size butt kickers. That would be way overkill for my seat. But I'm super happy. I did make one goof and it wasn't a big deal. I ran out to Walmart and got a female-to-female RCA adapter because for some reason I remembered the receiver, the wireless receiver, taking an RCA in, and I forgot that it itself uses an adapter between a 3.5 mil and an RCA, so I had male to male. So I should have just ordered that XLR to RCA adapter with a female end and then would have been perfect. But all in all, minor problem, trip to Walmart solved it, and we're good to go. Very happy. Live and learn. You know, this whole transducer project, this is now, what, the third upgrade to the system I've made. I'm at a point now where it works doing whatever I want to do at whatever volume I want to do, and it feels awesome. It's a lot of fun. Still wasn't that expensive. If I had to buy everything new from scratch right now, we're at just under $300 for the amp and the cable and adapters, and let's see, $400 for the butt kickers. So about $700 gets you to this really awesome point for 2 seats. You could thin it out and spread it to 4. I don't suggest it, but this makes 2 really awesome. 4 mini LFE butt kickers, the NX3000 amp, great combo. If you don't play at reference volume, you know what? That 230 amp for $100 less and no adapters needed, that's a really good value too. Like I said, this was the one and only movie, at least so far, that has made them overheat. Every other movie, even Midway, even Aquaman, no problems. Reference volume, whole movie. Not a single shutdown. Just the insane bass from Fury Road. But just knowing that was there, I had to fix it. So I hope this helps somebody. If you're on the fence about transducers, do it. Absolutely do it. If you're looking for any kind of upgrade for your sub or transducers, you know what? These pro audio amps with a little bit of work, awesome value. They work fantastically. That's it. We'll see you next time.